felt like a box that part of me died. Needle in a haystack. Middle Tennessee where I stay at. Moved out here cause it's laid back. That in the state tax. Now I got a gate where I stay at. First shot, look at that drip. I got control, I feel like it's click. I don't run deep now, look at my click. 1, 2, 3, 4, really that's it. 2005 in a row, that shit no step outside with a coke and a pinko. Load a roll of flip, dope in tone. Let it find the names, don't think so. What do you need?
Hello, and welcome back to Padres Playback. I'm Bob, he's Bill, and we're going to get into everything Padres that's happened in the past couple of weeks. You know, after a red-hot April, going 18-7 and a mediocre May, going 13-5, the Padres are somehow, some way, still within striking distance of the Dodgers for the NL West, only back by a handful of games. They've had lackluster offense, injuries piling up, and the trade deadline quickly approaching. So there's a lot to unpack here, so keep it locked in. We'll cover everything.
Yeah, let's jump into something real quick. Let's just get it out of the way. Let's introduce Coop. Coop is going to be joining us on the pod going forward. So, Coop, the floor is yours, sir.
Hello, hello, Friar Faithful. Thank you for watching, first and foremost. But my name's Coop. I'm excited to join this show. I'm 22 years old, born and raised in San Diego, so don't have quite as much experience as my co-hosts here through Padres despair and greatness. But like I said, excited to be here, excited to dive deep into the numbers. I'm a big analytics guy, so I hope to bring that to the show and give you guys a little more insight on some of the deeper numbers of baseball.
Yeah. Glad to have you. As you know, as you guys, many of you guys know, Coop is somebody that has been in the Threads group chat. I feel like most of our viewership comes from the group chat anyway, so should be a familiar face for everybody. But yeah, excited to have you, man. Let's get back into business. Let's start with medical updates as far as like housekeeping piece. Is it just me, or does it feel like our medical staff is quite mysterious?
Yeah, they're not very straightforward about anything,
Yeah.
really. I don't like it, to be completely honest. I always prefer transparency, especially with things like player injuries.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, looking at the updates we have gotten, we see that people are getting moved to this IL, that IL, but I feel like I really have to dig deep to figure out what actual injury a player has, which I feel like hasn't been the case in the past with the Padres and isn't a standard across baseball. So I'm not quite sure what's happening there.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of been the trend with this current regimen, right? If you recall to the past couple of years, the availability of guys like Joe Musgrove and Yu Darvish was largely like left to speculation. It wasn't a clear cut, this is what's going on. And it, 7-day IL becomes 10-day IL, becomes 60-day IL, and then, oh, this guy's done for the year. So, specifically, like, I feel like we haven't had a lot of clarity with guys like Pivetta, Campusano, Jake Cronenworth, like what's going on?
And that's what I was going to bring up. The thing with Pavetta and Cronenworth too. Cronenworth, he's died for all I care. Like he could be at Scripps Hospital in the hospice wing right now. Like we have no idea where he is. We could have left him in Mexico with a case of cervezas and been like, here you go, figure it out. And to me, that's really frustrating because, as fans going into these games, we like to know what to expect. And I think the whole thing with Jake, like concussion symptoms do last a long time, but we haven't heard anything other than he's doing all right, he's progressing from stamina, and that's it. Not even that he's hitting or fielding or, with the team. I don't know if you guys have even seen him in the dugout. I personally haven't. So I have no idea where he is.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely kind of curious as far as like, we're just not there's not a whole lot of transparency in that piece. And that kind of like brings us to Xander Bogaerts, right? Like he's a guy that got hit in the head in Baltimore, stayed in the game for half an inning and then left, and then he started the next day. So it's like, is this Drake Cronenworth all over again? You guys let him play with a concussion, and now he's been gone for what, like a month and a half now at this point?
Yeah, 2 months, all of May, because it was the 14th
Yeah.
when he got placed on the IL. So it's been 2 months and like what, 3 days at time of recording.
Yeah.
It's the 16th.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I don't know what's up with where he's at. I know that we've had some discussions in the group chat. I'm a bit of a Cronenworth hater. I haven't liked seeing him in the lineup for a while, but you never wish negative, especially when it comes to someone's health. So prayers up for Jake Cronenworth. I really genuinely hope he is doing okay. But I would love him to come back to the bench and be a piece that inspires the rest of the team moving forward.
No, absolutely. It's hard to tell right now which version of Jake we really saw. Right? Do we see a Jake who just doesn't have it in comparison to those two All Star years, or do we see a Jake Cronenworth trying to play through, a concussion? Because as even Bob and I talked about in our last pod, like there was some questionable like decisions on his part, even in Mexico City when he jumped in front of Bogey, right? So who knows which part, which version of Jake we're gonna get back. But yeah, certainly I see him as a bench piece as well when he comes back. But that really is up to Big Craig, right? So
Mm.
yeah. Bob, you want to guide us through some of the active moves that we just recently made? So Xander became a dad, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, so Xander just welcomed his first child. He's been reinstated from the paternity list, and unfortunately, Bryce Johnson has been DFA'd to make room for Xander. Um, and as far as everything else that's also happened, Will Wagner got called up originally when Xander first went on the paternity list, and he's been filling in a DH. Nick Castellanos unfortunately did get DFA'd while we were in Philadelphia and chose to be released rather than being outrighted to AAA, and is currently a free agent. And Samad Taylor, who's been a real bright spot since he got called up, but we'll touch on that later, has been activated from El Paso to fill in his roster spot. Um, and, I think with you, for me, I've been really happy with Samad Taylor so far. Sad to see Casty go, but also it was time. And that's just the business side of baseball. He was having poor at bats, wasn't really offering anything at the plate or on defense. And so I'd like to hear what you guys think about that as well.
Yeah, let's start with you, Coop.
Yeah. Um, a lot of interesting moves. I think Bryce Johnson getting DFA'd makes sense. We'll talk about it a bit later when we look at the last few series the Pods have played, but Bryce Johnson really has been a non-factor. He hasn't looked like he did in previous years. He definitely had a few bright spots in his time with the team in 2026. But I think with the roster as it stands, it made sense for him to go, especially to bring back X-Man.
Yeah.
And looking at those AAA guys who have come in, I mean, Samad Taylor and Wagner, they have impressed me to no end. Um, if you look at our last few series, they're part of our big three, in a manner of speaking, when it comes to the numbers they're putting up. So great to see our farm system working, even though we love scraping the barrel every year and getting every piece out. But the ones we have kept and that are making they're getting real playing time on our major league roster. I think they're showing their worth so far, and I'm excited to see how they develop as players.
Yeah.
And also, oh,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
um, I forgot to mention that Ramon Laureano is probably done for the
Yeah.
season. He was originally placed on the 10-day IL. Now he's been underwent surgery, and they're going to see what to do with him. Jeremiah Estrada, 15-day IL with hip inflammation, and we called up Jace Bowen. I forgot about Jace Bowen and Rodolfo Duran
Sean's
earlier,
gonna
who
be
got
mad at
called
you
up before
for forgetting Jace Bowen. Sean, if you're
dude.
listening,
Sean, I'm sorry, dude. Our Lord and Savior Jace Bowen did slip my mind. Um, and Rodolfo Duran being called up for Campy, I've been super
yeah,
impressed with Rodolfo Duran, and especially in the Dodger series, he swung the game completely in our favor from behind the plate, which
yep,
is something you don't really see a lot anymore. Defensive catching, really being that big of a factor with challenges. He was 3 for 3 that night. He was 3 for 3 throwing out runners. And he's provided a really nice bat to sort of slot into that 9 spot that's actually been productive. One of the only productive Padre bats from time to time since his addition to the roster before the Seattle series.
yeah. I kind of want to go back to talking about Nick. I know I've been very vocal about wanting him DFA'd for quite a while now, right? But um, there are a lot of Padres fans on threads that question the timing of the move. happened in the middle of the series in Philadelphia. Kind of felt like, hey, you didn't work out. We brought you back where we found you type of deal. I didn't have a problem with it initially, but after the fact, like a day later when it came out that Loriano was out for the season, it was like, well, you kind of knew that was going to happen, right? So, why call Jace up now and cut Loriano and not just or cut Castellanos and not just wait till you put Loriano on the IL. So I thought the timing was weird, but no issues with him going just because, like you guys said, like he's not hitting, right? And defensively, we've all seen how bad he looked in left and right? So it's just time to go. Yeah. I think the
Well,
only
and like
go ahead, sorry.
it's like what you brought up. I think it was the first Cardinal series we played at home. The Nick Castellanos way to play defense is like take a bad route to the ball in the outfield,
Yep.
scoop it up and throw it really hard to make it look good, but not actually be effective in terms of like fielding the ball. Um, and we just can't really have that right now with everything else that's going on with this team.
No, absolutely. The last thing we'll touch on, kind of with the housekeeping portion of it, is Mason Miller quick bereavement. Kyle Hart called up in place of it. We saw him, I think, last night. But yeah, let's go ahead and skip ahead. Let's talk about um, Bob. You recently went to Seattle. Talk to us about Seattle, and you also went to Fenway earlier this year. So talk to us about your experience
Yeah.
there.
So Fenway and Seattle both have been on my list for a long time in terms of just knocking off ballparks because they're beautiful ballparks and they totally lived up to the hype. I mean, Fenway, if you are a baseball person, I know everybody says that you need to go,
Mhm.
and you really do. I mean, it is just like me and my wife did a tour of the whole ballpark with like a tour guide before the game on Saturday, and it was great. Getting to look at like where Ted Williams supposedly hit a ball 500 feet, like the oldest seats in the American League. And just the history of the ballpark. The place really is like a cathedral for baseball fans, and everybody who was at those games, like super friendly, super nice, like super, down to talk analytics, talk like the deep stuff, like underlying stuff with baseball. And I got to see some really good Padres wins. The first game didn't really go in our favor. I didn't really agree, if you guys can even remember that far back,
Yeah.
with them removing Michael King when he had 5 2/3, and then immediately putting in Wandy, who gave up what would be the game-winning run. And I think we bounced back really nicely. I've said it to Billy. I've written about it on my Substack. I think I said it in the group chat too. That like that first road trip really, I felt like brought that like first part of the season into fruition. We went into Boston, won in hostile territory after a really bad homestand, and came back and went undefeated at home. And when I was going to Seattle, sort of the similar thing happened. We had a pretty bad homestand leading into that road trip, and I went into Seattle and I was like, man, we're facing some pretty good pitching, and the Padres hit them really well. I mean, I think I got to see Duran's first big league hit, and it was a home run. I got to see Nicky hit a 3-run homer. Gavin Sheets hit 2 bombs, and the team just really felt like. And that's sort of what I was talking about, like off camera. It was like, I feel like these guys really show up and play to the level of their competition. And they were facing down Logan Gilbert, Emerson Hancock, and George Kirby, who are no slouches by any stretch of the imagination. And same thing with Fenway. Seattle is just like a baseball fan's ballpark. It is tight. You're close to the field. The people there are awesome. Great food. Um, I walked to the ballpark every day with my wife, and just really took in everything around it. And those guys, they love baseball. They love baseball the way we love baseball in San Diego. Like everybody's hyped for the team, regardless of how the game turned out. And I also got to see some really nice baseball there too. I mean, Mason Miller get a 4-out save, which I know those are starting to rack up, and we don't really love that for the best reliever in the National League, to sort of have that extra wear and tear. Um, and then I got to see a really nice pitching performance my last day, out of Bradley, who came in and threw 2 scoreless innings in relief and really locked the game down after Giolito got chased.
Yep.
And I don't really agree with Stammen leaving him in for his first ever start at the big league level this year. Trying to get 6 full out of him. I don't really think that's and that's something we'll touch on later. But I left Seattle being like, dude, we're right back in it, and it's a much different feeling today.
No, absolutely. And Seattle kind of has that, like, I know there are like our or that are cup rival or whatever, but there's some parallels between the two cities, right? Like they lost the Sonics, a while ago. We lost the Chargers here in San Diego, so definitely feel like Safeco's like, or well, it opened when it opened. It was called Safeco. T-Mobile is something that I definitely want to be at. So thanks for sharing that experience with us for sure. Let's jump into the previous couple series. So it's been a while since we've recorded, right? So we've played the Mets. The only thing I'll say about the Phillies is thank God we don't have to see them again for the rest of the season. And that 6 games is over with. We played the Mets. We dropped that series 1-2. We ended up taking 2 out of 3 from Cincinnati. This team just like goes on these prolonged slump, and it just kind of like they win these series like Baltimore, Cincinnati, and it just kind of wheels you right back in. And here we go again, dropping the first 2 in St. Louis. Talk to me, fellas, about like the past couple series and what are your thoughts? We can start with you, Coop.
Yeah, the past couple series, I hate to say it, they're reminding me of Pots baseball from when I was in high school, when I was a kid, where we're consistently losing series, but almost never getting swept in series. Um, just 1-2s, maybe 2-2s, um, and the team it just has no life to it. Like Bob was talking about with his trip to see the Pods in Fenway. That point in the season, we were scared, right? Those first 5 to 10 games we looked awful. And then the team started hitting more bombs, a lot of walk-offs, Mason Miller coming in clutch, and we kind of knew that wasn't sustainable, but the team started looking good. And now we've kind of leveled off a little bit with the roster just underperforming compared to what they should be doing, in all honesty. And it just looks like older Padres baseball, at least older in my eyes as a younger fan. Um, yeah, waiting for something to go real bad or real good because I feel like it's kind of
Yeah.
around the corner with this team.
Yep.
And I think for me the biggest thing, we talked about it with the Dodgers, is the Phillies have sort of been the measuring stick also in the National League. They're a team that's always there. They started off the season really bad. They get rid of Rob Thompson, they bring in Don Mattingly, and all of a sudden they start looking a lot better. And it just seems like for whatever reason in the regular season, whenever we need a win, we end up losing to the Phillies.
Yep.
And I don't really have an answer. It's just like when we give up that first inning bomb to Schwarber, I get flashbacks to 2022
Yep.
and Schwarber hitting one like off of Robert Suarez that went 500 feet and still might be up in the air somewhere. And I think the team might sort of have that too. And they're like, dude, like man, they already got one, and it's only the first inning, and it just feels like there's no fight. And the thing with those like Boston series, the Seattle series, even the one in Baltimore, like you felt the team was like rowing in the same direction. They were trying to come back and like we got this. And I just didn't feel that. The at bats were lifeless. The pitching, for the most part, held it down. I mean, we lost to Philly. I think almost every game was one run. It was 2-3. It
Yep.
was 3-4, and then 3-1, if I remember correctly. And we play the Mets, and everything just falls apart. And they're a team who is grasping for something to go right, and we just gave them everything to go right. And I was like watching, those 3 games, and it just like made me feel like this season's like not going in the right direction. Like everything that we were so excited about in March, April, the beginning of May has gone away. And when you have like these injuries piling up and you have a lot of young guys playing, it was like when we went to Philly and they had Johan Duran come out to close the game. Jace Bowen swings at 3 sliders in the left batter's box. It just sort of compounds into the
Yeah.
next series, especially for these young guys. But on the other hand, you could also argue that this would be a real like come to Jesus moment for the team and be like, this isn't where we want to be. This isn't the baseball we want to play. And so I'm hoping to see some of that. I'm still
Yeah.
looking to see some of that. The thing that worries me is we're in June, mid June, almost at the All Star break, and I don't know which version of my team is going to show up every night. It's like
Absolutely.
we're in May still.
Yeah. to be fair, in Bowen's defense, he's probably not seeing a lot of Durans in El Paso, right? So,
No,
he's
no, no, no,
he's
no.
one of the best closers
Nothing against
in
Jays.
baseball for a reason. But I
Yeah.
think that the Phillies thing kind of dates back to, like, if I had to pinpoint, the reality is in baseball, some teams just have your number, right? Like,
Mhm.
if I could refer to whose numbers we have in the East, is typically the Braves. Right, we play the Braves pretty well. The Phillies have kind of had their foot on our necks for a couple of years now, dating back to the NLCS. Most Padres fans would tell you is, that's what sin curse, right? Who knows, right? But I was
Yeah.
there for game one of the
Yeah.
NLCS. I was in right field. I saw Schwarber's bomb go right over my head. And ever since then, I just like the Phillies is like the big brother that you don't want to see come down the hallway, right? Because they're just gonna stomp on us. Um, um, and then the Mets was a series that like we should be winning because that's a team that is massively underperforming that has had the injuries. So it's the past month and a half of baseball, if I had to kind of put my feelings and my words into it, I would describe it as very up and down, very stressful, kind of like a round of golf where like I am playing whack fuck for 17 holes and I birdie 18 and I think I could play this game all of a sudden and no you can't, right? So when we swept the Mariners it was like, oh, we're back to where we're supposed to be, right? And then Phillies happen. And then we took 2 out of 3 from the Reds, and we're like, oh, we're okay again. And then we take 2 out of 3 from Baltimore, and then we go into St. Louis and drop these two, right? So it's like you said, Bob, we don't really know what version of the Padres that we're gonna get, right? But before we kind of move on, I kind of want to touch on the little beanball controversy in Baltimore this past weekend. What are your thoughts on that, fellas?
I think that Ron Marinaccio shouldn't have been suspended, and I think Craig Stammen should have appealed a suspension. I think if you are a pitcher and you're working fast and somebody calls you out on it and you throw at their head, that's bush league, and
Yeah.
you shouldn't do that. I mean, I get, the whole thing about like it was a two seamer that like ran inside. Like, get lost, dude. Like, if your two seamer is running 12 inches too far inside, you shouldn't be at the big league
Yeah.
level. And then he locked in like many of those pitches before that. I think he was upset that Bogey was like, "You're working too fast. I don't like that," and let the umpire know. And somebody, I think it was for me, and it called him out on it too, the previous inning before.
Yeah.
I think it was intentional. I'm going to die on that hill. And I think that Bagley throwing at Gunner and missing, and then Ron throwing at him and hitting. I think, if you listen to what the Baltimore manager said, it's warranted. Like tit for tat. That's baseball. It governs itself. And the fact that Ron is going to serve a 3-game suspension maybe doesn't really sit well with me. It feels like, if you guys ever got in a fight at school and it's like the kid who punches you doesn't get in trouble, you get in trouble for like going and hitting them because you're supposed to be the bigger person. Like, I don't think, and he did it the right way. They always say hit a guy in the ribs, hit a guy in the butt, and that's exactly what he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just what I have to say about it.
Yeah. What do you think, Coop? Intent or what do you impossible to judge?
Oh, I 100% think it was intentional.
Yeah.
Like Bob said, looking at how Gibson, I believe it was Gibson, was working too fast. Yeah, I mean, and he was just straight up.
He was, yeah.
And I understand his frustration with like, Bogey and Fermin going to the umps, hey dad, he's doing this wrong, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it doesn't give you the right to beat a guy in the head. Especially someone who has just had a kid. I mean, that blew my mind that Xander would be targeted in that way. If you want to, throw a bean at Fermin next time he's up to bat, sure, fine. But you don't do that to a guy who's just become a dad.
No,
I
absolutely.
think it's that simple. Now,
Yeah.
the Padres did themselves no favors by missing twice on
Yeah.
trying to get Gunner back, and that gave the media some fuel, because I think we're certainly being painted as the bad guys in this altercation when it comes to national media talking about it. But it got me thinking about suspensions and ejections in general. with only Marinaccio and Stammen, getting any type of substantial repercussions for their actions.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I feel like it should be as simple as the first time it happens. Okay, everyone gets a warning, because that's what Stammen was saying. I don't know if y'all have seen John Boy's lip read that
Yep.
came out. I think it was this morning. Um, but
That
that's what he
was
was talking
yeah.
about.
That
Like
was his
Stammen was
hill.
saying, you
Yep.
guys didn't warn us.
Yep.
He was
That
saying
was
you guys didn't warn us.
yeah. I always kind of like to play devil's advocate a little bit. Like I absolutely thought there was intent to it, but um when you think about intent, it's almost impossible to prove. We can only work with what we see. We don't actually know what's inside these players' heads and what their decisions are, right? The counter argument that I've seen that a lot of Orioles fans made were, Trey Gibson was wild the whole day. He walked 5 people that day, and yes, and he also threw one that Manny had to duck and cover for, right? So impossible to see to judge intent, but I mean, like, it's pretty obvious. Like, for those who don't know the rules, the pitch clock is 15 seconds when the bases is empty, and the batter has 8 seconds to get in the box and show alert, which usually is eye contact towards the pitcher. And every time you watch a game, you see the umpire come out and reprimand a pitcher is typically with this motion, like, you didn't make eye contact. So if you rewatch that replay, Xander was well within his right to say, slow down here, you're moving a little too fast, kid. But again, impossible to judge intent. But I agree with what both of you said. I don't think it's fair for the suspension piece to happen. And I think Stammen's hill was, you didn't warn us. Like, there was no warnings issued, and you just tossed my pitcher. So yeah, so that's neither here or there. But I thought that was interesting. We don't really see a lot of that stuff in baseball anymore in general, especially with two teams that don't play each other. So that was a little interesting, um, little twist to that series, if you will, right? We only play each other, what, 3 times a year. They came here last year, we went there this year. So it's not like this is like a heated rivalry, if you will. But let's talk about Sunday real quick. Uh Tavares and Walker Bueller, what happened there?
Take it away, Bob.
I Walker Bueller is somebody who likes to talk. I think Padres fans are well aware of that.
Yeah.
What was said, yes, is as good as mine. Clearly, Tavares then didn't sit right with Walker. I think it was when he was covering the base.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't sit right with him, the way that maybe he didn't pull to the outside, or maybe
No,
he
no,
thought
no.
he was coming too
It,
much inside.
it was before. It was a different play. He wasn't covering the base. It was so what had happened was Tavares had swung on 3-0 and flew out to
Oh,
right. And then we saw the cutaway, and then the broadcast showed Gavin getting in between Tavares. And at first, Don and Mud thought Tavares was jawing at Nando and Bogey, and then the replay showed
mm,
Walker was chirping. So um, it's nothing really at the end of the day. Walker Bueller being Walker Bueller, he's always been feisty, right? He's the guy that throws a glove at the wall when he gets pulled after 5. But I think this would be a good segue for us to talk about our pitching. Uh, Honestly, just my thoughts outside of our bullpen and Mason Miller. Um, our pitching is just not very good, especially the rotation.
yeah, the starting rotation leaves a lot to be desired, and I think we were talking about it this morning. Who outside of Michael King do we really feel confident in getting us not even a quality start, 5 good innings? And when our bullpen, the bullpen outside of Mason Miller, people talk about Adrian Morejon, Estrada, even though he's not here, but coming into the year being like the best bullpen in baseball. It doesn't really mean anything when you have to throw 4 innings every game.
Yeah,
It just doesn't matter.
yeah,
Um, and I think that is, we've touched on it. Me and Billy have touched on it every single episode. That more specifically starting pitching, but our bullpen guys, you're starting to see that wear and tear. You're starting to see these like performances where they give up, 2 hits and a run over an inning and a third, opposed to coming in fresh, getting a clean inning, and letting the offense go back to work.
Yeah.
And I think that might also be compounding with the offensive struggles because they feel like they have to do so much in order to put themselves in a position to win. That like a 2-run lead that used to feel safe
Yeah.
does not anymore.
Yeah, and you guys have heard me talk about it a lot over the course of the past month. Like it doesn't like any conversation surrounding our pitching is a non-starter because our offense is just historically bad, right? It's interesting because Coop and I got to talk about it a little bit while we're doing sound check before we hit the record button. One of my new favorite analytics is FIP. So Coop, tell me a little bit about FIP and if the viewers had to guess who our best pitcher this season has been, you would never guess. But take it away, Coop.
Yeah. So to break down what FIP is for those who haven't heard of it, it stands for Fielding Independent Pitching, and it's essentially a metric that is kind of similar to ERA. You can sort of look at it like ERA, but the idea is to measure how good a pitcher is exclusively based on what they can control. So that's things like strikeouts, walks, hit by pitch, home runs, those types of things, right? If a pitcher gives up a single, that doesn't give up a run. If there's an error, right, it doesn't go into ERA, but it can go into total runs allowed. So FIP sort of lets you look exclusively at a pitcher in a vacuum. And if I look real quick at our leaders here in FIP, of course you have guys like Mason Miller who are up there, right, at a 0.37. And like I said, it's adjusted to be similar to ERA. So when you're thinking about what's a good ERA or a bad ERA, you could think the same way with FIP.
Yep.
Um, I believe our best FIP from a starter is currently Michael King, and that's sitting at a 4.3,
Yep.
which is below league average. I think league average sits around a 4. And we have plenty of people who are currently in our rotation who are throwing out 5.5. That's from Griffin Canning,
Yeah.
6 from Lucas Giolito. It's just not a good look, and you'd expect the relievers to be better in metrics like that, but they're simply not. Herman Marquez has our highest at a 6.7. That's another starter who's not doing well. You look at Matt Waldron, 5,
Yep.
right? These are numbers you don't want to see, especially when you talk about a bullpen that, as Bob noted, people came into this year lauding our bullpen as best in baseball. But outside of Mason Miller, all the conversations about our bullpen have been usage because our starters can't do anything. And when you're pushing these talents to fill 2 innings when they normally fill one, fill 2 and change when they normally fill 1 and change, it's a recipe for disaster,
Yeah.
and immediately sets you up to have higher numbers like this.
Yeah. Slight correction. The best starter actually on the roster right now with FIP is actually Walker Buehler at 3.46, which I was surprised
Thank
when I
you.
saw.
My apologies. I
Yeah,
totally
no,
missed
you're
that.
okay because we all like on paper, Michael King is our ace, but he's been anything but, which we can talk a little bit more about. But Canning and Giolito really hasn't been the saviors we were waiting for, and I think on our first episode, Bob kind of alluded to that, right? So as of entering today, Lucas Giolito is currently sitting at a 2-2 record, which doesn't matter for starting pitchers. I always think win-loss is kind of stupid anyways, but let's talk about the important numbers. 6 starts or 6 games, he was the bulk guy last night. 4.56 ERA, a FIP of 5.94, a disgusting whip of a 1.792. He's basically allowing almost 2 runners on base per inning. Talk to me a little bit about what you've seen from Gio and Canning, Bob.
I'm I'm very disappointed in both of these guys. I think especially after Canning's first appearance against the White Sox, me and you both were a little bit more bullish and like,
That
this
changeup
is
looked
something he can
good.
really build off.
Yeah.
It looked really good.
Yeah.
The changeup looked really good. The changeup slider combo were deadly. And I don't think Griffin is really after Milwaukee, I don't think he's really bounced back. I think, his confidence, this is just I have no inside information. This is just a fan who watches every game. And, when I see Griffin Canning, start to spiral, there's nothing that pulls him out of it.
Yeah.
And, his command goes, he's walking more guys, which, that's the number one thing they tell you. You can't walk guys. Walks equal runs. And, Gio's having a lot of the same problems, and it's so funny because his first start in Seattle almost went the same way as Canning's first start against the White Sox. His changeup, even though it sits at like 78 miles an hour, people couldn't get on plane with it. They couldn't even touch it. And now, you're seeing a guy who the hardest he throws is 93, really labor, especially even with an opener, to try to even get 5 innings. And personally, I thought that Giolito wasn't really going to be the savior we were hoping for from the time we signed him, just because he has sat on the shelf that long over the winter. Guys who sit for that long, there's usually a reason why, and I think we found out the reason why. He can't control the strike zone at all.
Yeah.
And when he tries to locate his fastball, it's usually up. And when you throw up and it's that, soft, it's crazy calling 93 soft, but it's really soft for these days. People barrel it. And even if they don't barrel it, they're making good contact. And he just is getting himself into these jams over and over and over again and can't seem to get his way out of them. He makes fires and can't put them out. And it's really disappointing as somebody who I had, mediocre hopes for, to even be a fifth starter. He can't even do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Coop, talk to me a little bit about the regression of Randy Vasquez. What have you noticed?
Wow. Yeah, that's been one of the most interesting drops of the year for me. Because I feel like he's regressed to not only 2025 level, but worse.
Yeah.
I think in 2025 he was at minimum, like at least watching, it felt like he was a league average starter.
Yeah.
He wasn't someone we could necessarily count on for a quality start, but he probably wasn't going to get blown out of the water, unless it was in, Coors Field where both pitchers are getting blown out of the water. Um, and this year he started red hot.
Yeah.
I don't have the numbers directly in front of me, but even just his win rate. I mean, if you look at his numbers on the season, he started 14 games, pitched 75 innings, so looking at about 5 innings a start. 18.5 K percentage is reasonable. Um, his walk rate is pretty low too. So all the numbers on the season long look solid, but then you start looking at last few series, last couple appearances. Um, he was 1-1 in these last 4 series that we've been talking about heavy, from the Mets series to today. But he's giving up a lot of hits,
Yeah.
and I mean a lot of hits.
Yeah.
And those hits compound. I mean, we talk about walks equal runs. Hits do the exact same thing. It doesn't matter if you're giving them the
Yep.
bags for free if they can get them no matter what.
Yep.
Um, and I honestly could not have read this coming from Randy. I expected a little bit of regression just because regression to the mean is what we expect.
Yep.
It's how we keep ourselves sane when people go crazy good, and it's how we keep ourselves sane when Manny's batting 170.
Yep.
But for Randy, I'm not sure what to expect from him moving forward. I would love for him to even get back to that 2025 form, be a solid third or fourth starter in our rotation if we make some moves at the deadline. But I'm honestly not quite sure what I can expect to see from him moving forward.
Yeah. So let's play a quick game here. Agree, disagree with this assessment here, fellas. So in a nutshell, a rotation, I see Michael King as a number 2, number 3 guy on a contender, right? You throw in Bueller, Canning, Giolito, and who am I missing here? Vasquez,
Marquez?
Vasquez,
Vasquez.
Vasquez, Bueller, Canning,
Vasquez.
Giolito. Those are all like 3 to 5 guys, inning eaters. Wouldn't give the ball to them in a playoff game type guys, right? So that's kind of how I feel our rotation is right now, right? Just a bunch of 2s and 4s and 5s.
Yeah, I agree. And I think especially, like what Coop was talking about, Randy was sort of building towards the beginning of the season as maybe emerging from that 3 to a number 2.
Yeah.
And now he wouldn't even be a number 5 starter.
Yeah.
I think for a true contending team. And I think, we've talked about it a lot, but if you have guys who consistently go 4 innings, you're not going to win baseball games.
Yep.
And that's not what contenders do. They don't go 4 innings. They go 6, sometimes 7. So I totally agree with what you're saying, Bill.
Yeah, looking at the rotation, I'm 100% in agreement with both of you. Um, that there is one. I trust Michael King on the mound in a playoff game, but even recently, his form has not necessarily lined up with what we come to expect. Um, in his last couple starts, he was going six. I think he's pitched 12 and change, in his last two, but his whip is not good.
Yeah.
Um, I want to say his whip is sitting around like 1.4, when ideally a guy who's on this team as it stands, your number one starter, is keeping that around a one. Um, and Michael King K's are things that we're missing,
Yeah.
as of late, right? Um, I feel like our classic all down by way of the K traditionally would come from guys like Michael King, and we'd see him in those highlights a lot, and that's just not happening,
Yeah.
and hasn't happened since early days of the year. Um, but we are in the dog days of summer, or we're getting into them, um, and we're getting into where sort of every team is figuring out where they sit. So I think this rotation still has a chance to get some life back into it, especially if we can get any one of these guys who are currently sitting on the IL back in the rotation. I don't know, honestly, if there's any hope for Pavetta. Could be partially because we haven't gotten a ton of info on
Yeah.
him. Um, but if a guy like Pavetta can come back and we have a 1-2 with a King Pavetta, I feel a little better, especially if we have some of that regression to the mean we were talking
Yeah.
about, with some of our offensive studs, to be a more complete ball club,
Yeah.
and one that can look competent during a playoff run.
Yeah. Let's wrap up the pitching talk with some unlikely heroes. I'll let Bob talk about this. The two lefties everybody loves to hate out of the pen has actually been good.
I love me some Wandy Peralta, and let me tell you why. Because Wandy Peralta in the month of May, if you were to take a guess at how many earned runs he gave up, it'd be two.
Yeah.
And he threw 13 innings and only gave up 9 hits. And this is somebody who we've seen be nails for long stretches, and also be really not nails for long stretches. So Wandy Peralta and Yuki Matsui have both put together what I believe to be their best months in brown and gold
Yeah.
in May. And this has been something that people have been waiting on. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but when we signed Yuki Matsui, he was billed as sort of the Mariano Rivera of the MPB.
Yeah.
He had amassed close to 500 saves in the MPB when he came over. And not that I think he's that, but he has turned into, at least this year for right now, a very solid lefty reliever when he was the exact opposite last year. All the control issues, all the rough edges are still there. They're just less. They're happening less. He's, spiking balls in the dirt less. You'll still have him fall down when he tries to throw a curveball. So it doesn't always look the prettiest, but in the month of May, Wandy and Yuki gave up 3 runs.
Yeah.
Yuki gave up 1 run. And he came in a lot of like fireman type situations where we needed a big ground ball and he got it.
Yeah.
So I'm loving what I'm seeing from them personally.
Yeah, I think all that goodwill that Yuki has built was instantly thrown away on Sunday when he spiked that warm up pitch that ended up landing Vermin on the IL, which how Padres coded is that, right? Warm up pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's move on to the offense. There is a lot to unpack here. A lot of just plainly offensive to watch offense is what we're calling it, right? So let's start with you, Coop. What are your thoughts on this offense or lack thereof?
It's not fun to watch. It's not fun to watch. Um, you can pick almost any offensive stat that has any like large level of meaning, and we're dead last.
Yeah.
Runs scored, dead last. Hits, dead last. Ribbies, dead last. Batting average, dead last. On base, dead last. Got to be slugging in there too. I don't have it directly in front of me, but I'm sure it's up there, or down there rather. Strikeouts, we're not striking out a lot, but if we're not getting on base anyways, that doesn't matter too much. I believe our strikeouts is kind of the only stat that's consistently tracked that is outside the bottom 20.
Yeah.
Our offense is doing nothing. Now, in recent weeks, we have seen some spikes. We've seen and we'll talk about it a little more later. But we've seen some players come back into form. Um, what we expect from them, at least when it came to numbers output, but in some slightly different ways. So I think the offense is on the rebuild, but I think it's at the very bottom of that curve,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and we just got to hope that it keeps going back up.
Yeah, and it's a difficult watch, right? Because for the most part, the first month and a half of the season, first 2 months, it's been guys like Gavin Sheets coming through, guys like Xander Bogarts coming through, Miguel Andujar, while our big three and Tatis, Nando, and or Nando, Manny, and Merrill have struggled for the most part, right? So um it's hard to sustain that when your big three just isn't doing what they're supposed to do. The OPS numbers are disgusting all across the board, right? Like our current leader right now is Will Wagner at 946. That's on the roster, and the Samad Taylor coming in at 919, right? So yeah, Bob, what are your thoughts?
Bad,
Yeah.
atrocious, anemic. Um, I think the thing that concerns me the most, outside of the lack of slug, the lack of just general hitting, is that we cannot seem to work a count to save our lives. Guys just are not taking pitches and at least trying to take competent at bats. It feels like, from the outside looking in, that all these guys are pressing.
Yeah.
I think Jackson Merrill is probably the worst case of it right now. Every time he gets up, if there's a sinker low in the zone, he's going to swing right through it.
Yeah.
And, tonight he had a big double. So shouts out, give him his dues. But just not even trying to like work a pitcher. I think the guy who they had tonight for the Cardinals, his most pitches that he threw in an inning was 17.
Yeah.
And you just can't win games having that. Like when we continuously have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 innings. And I it's like I don't even really know at this point, because like I'm a guy who likes expected stats, and at the beginning of this year we were, about middle of the road in all of the actual numbers, and like second to top 5 in hard hit percentage, all this stuff. And that has gone by the wayside too. We're not pulling the ball anymore. Guys are seemingly just hitting it straight into the ground or right up into the air. And for me, that comes back to an approach problem.
Yeah.
And I would just like to see a more refined approach at the plate, especially from guys who have been big league vets like Manny for close to 2 decades.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like his 15th year in the league.
Yeah.
And yes, he is leading the team in walks, but the last time I checked, he had 27.
Yeah.
The Baltimore, their team leader for walks, Taylor Ward, has 62.
Yeah.
And so that's bad. Even when like our team leaders are atrocious offensively, that there's not really a lot to feel good about right now. And
Yeah.
the bats woke up in an unsustainable way in Baltimore, and I'm hoping we see more of that.
Yeah, and that's all you can hope for at this point, right? I think this is a good segue for us to talk about Steven Souza Jr., right? So, the old adage is coaches coach, players gotta execute, players gotta perform, right? And we've had dialogue about this in the past where I asked the question like, what is exactly a batting coach's role in today's game, right? A lot of these guys, veterans like Manny, Nando, they have their own hitting coaches and they have their own trainers that they go through. So how much of this is on Steven Souza? And should he be scapegoated? What are your fellas thoughts on this?
I can jump on that.
I
Yeah.
think, yeah,
Um,
yeah, go ahead.
or thank you. Um, I think we kind of have to, because I think something needs to switch up.
Yeah.
Um, again, I'm not in the ball club, or I'm not, within the team. Um, I don't have any insider information that you guys don't. But whenever everything's going wrong, you just got to switch something up. Um, and I don't think that looks like a trade quite yet. I think we sit on that for a little bit, but I think it could look like, shaking up the leadership.
Yep.
And that's starting with Souza. Um, when I think of a hitting coach, I sort of think of them more as an offense manager in the day to day, and that leads me to think about what roles different players should play on a team, right? There's some teams that have had success building incredible power. The Phillies come to mind. I feel like they're a team that doesn't work the bases a ton. They're gonna hit bombs, especially against us, but they're gonna hit bombs. Um,
Especially
and
against us.
that's not necessarily, especially against us. Um, but that's not necessarily ideal, or sorry, not ideal, not necessarily realistic, even though it is the ideal. So it comes back to having a guy in the one slot who will get on base. And in recent weeks, Toddy has been that guy. I have to be honest. His slash numbers are pretty incredible over the last few weeks. Your two guy, ideally someone who can push them forward if they can't steal it, which I think we'll talk about. Toddy steals a little bit as well, and how those numbers have been going up. And you want those guys who are going to be able to hit it to the wall or past the wall in 3 and 4. Um, and I think we have the talent to do it, but I think it comes more to shaping up those guys to where Toddy just needs to get on base, right? Um, Jackson needs to not swing at everything. Um, Manny needs to get some plate discipline as well. I think his swings honestly look a bit worse than Jackson's, even if he's not whiffing quite at the same rate, because I think he's a bit behind Merrill in that negative stat. Um, but yeah, it's about everyone just needing to do their job,
Yeah.
and their job isn't necessarily to hit a bomb.
Yeah. I'll jump in real quick and add in. Nando has 17 steals coming in today. 8 caught stealing, so he's trending for probably career highs here. And who would have thought like he would have turned into like a prototypical leadoff guy who works the count, walks. He's drawn 28 of those coming in today. Yeah. Absolutely. Bob, what about you? What are your thoughts?
So I agree with a lot of what Coop said, and I think baseball is different than a lot of sports in a lot of ways, where the coaches arguably have the least amount of control.
Yeah.
You know, they don't draw plays; they just sort of put the lineup out and decide when to take guys in and out. But the big things, like managers manage the big picture, the day to day, and keeping the noise to a minimum and making sure the guys show up and do their job and do it well and put them in positions to succeed. And the hitting coach is supposed to provide that on the offensive side, is just how I look at it.
Yeah.
And right now we're not doing that. And sort of like offensive line in football, like when your team does really well, nobody says anything about a hitting coach. And when your team does really bad, it's all anybody can talk about. And I think that unfortunately for Steven Souza Jr., at his time might be coming to an end soon. And I think only because I think they need a message. The team needs a message that their performance is going to cost people their jobs. And it could serve as like a rallying moment. And, you look around the league, it has already happened this year. And, I look at guys like Bud Black, who have been a big league manager. He's been a career Major League Baseball guy. And what is he doing?
Yeah.
Is he stepping in and offering anything? Is there too many cooks in the kitchen? Is there, something, it's a communication breakdown somewhere. You talk about Manny, Toddy, Xander, a lot of these guys have their own hitting coaches. And if Steven Souza Jr. is okay with that, where in the middle can they mesh? And in the beginning of the year, it seems like a lot of meshing was going on. Maybe not with the big three, but with the rest of the lineup, the other 6 guys who were in there every day. And either he's not giving them stuff that they feel like is valid to implement, and he's just sort of there as like a mouthpiece for the manager, or these guys are actively choosing to do what their own coaches are saying. And there's, again, it's not one thing or the other. I think it is a hodgepodge of people pushing at the plate because they feel like they need to score 7 runs so the bullpen doesn't give up the lead. Or Lucas Giolito gives up a 3-run homer and they're like, well, that's on us now. And there's not a voice coming through clear to sort of be like, hey, like, you're up with nobody on, get on base, and we'll have Xander push you over. And then we'll bring Gavin up to bat. We have a righty on the mound. He's going to bring you home more likely than not. And so I want an offensive identity, I guess, is what I'm getting at. And like Coop said, the Phillies are power. I don't know what ours is. Schulte had like Petco Park hitting, and you saw it a little bit with the bunt attack that we laid down that worked really well. But I just want to see some more of that moving forward for me to feel confident in keeping Steven Souza Jr. around.
Yeah, important to note that we're just 3 guys talking about our favorite baseball team. Neither of us any of us have any kind of sources inside the clubhouse. So this is all just like speculation from three guys who follow the team closely by watching him play nearly every single game, right? But if I had to kind of like, we could sit here and debate whether it's fair or not. We don't really know for a fact what Sousa's role is in that clubhouse, right? But at the end of the day, if he's a hitting coach, these are numbers that he owns. So, I mean, I think, I it, it feels scapegoat ish, but I mean, I think it's gonna have to come down to that if the offense doesn't turn around, right? Let's quickly switch gears to the $39 million elephant in the room, Manny Machado. His extension kicks in next year at 39 a year for 7 years, leading him up to age 41. Odds are he probably retires well before then, right? But this is a cliff that I don't think any of us saw coming this season, right? At least not yet at age 33.
No, I was thinking it would come probably by like 35, and Manny would transition to a DH guy, because even though, I mean, we've all talked about it, he's kind of lost a little bit of step on defense too. That like his hitting, he always hit for power. Manny Machado is the only active player in baseball with 10 or more seasons of 25 home runs and 80 RBIs. And that, I was like, every year Manny Machado gets the back of his baseball card, and he always does, and it's not happening right now. So I'm worried about Manny. Yeah.
Yeah, what about you, Coop?
Yeah, yeah. Manny's performance this year hasn't made a ton of sense to me. I feel like I'm seeing him. Oh, when I think of a Manny home run, and I see it in my mind, I'm seeing a pitch that's dropping in the zone. It honestly could be low and away, and he's still going to get it, and then he's crushing that sucker 420 feet, right? And this year, those pitches are coming in, and he's just not getting to them. So something like that makes me think that it's mechanical related, um, because it feels like they're the same scenarios that he's been seeing. It's not like pitchers are bringing him something he's never seen before. Um, but something feels different watching Manny. It feels like there's no pep in his step. It feels like he knows he's gonna swing at three pitches and miss all three when he goes up for an at bat. And we have seen his walk numbers be somewhat decent. I think he closed out tonight with a walk when I honestly thought he was going to strike out and that game, and it ended up falling to the next guy to close it out for the Cardinals. But I I honestly do not have a read on what's going on with Manny. I believe right now he's hitting 170 ish. He's on base 250. That means one in every three times he's getting on base is a walk,
Yeah.
and that's not the Manny Machado that I know and love. So, hoping he can figure it out. Again, hopefully he has his own coaches that are doing something other than what Sousa's doing, and that they can figure out something to bring him back. Because even with Tatis succeeding, even with Jackson even looking a touch better, as much as he's still whiffing, he's still getting those extra base hits. And I feel at least it feels like a higher clip than he was early in the year. But I don't know what to expect of Manny moving forward, and I'm praying it's positive.
Yeah, it's a nervous piece, right? You think about just the money that's owed to him. And to be fair, I will go on record and say Manny Machado has earned every penny that's coming to him, right? I think he's been the face of this era of competitive Padres baseball, albeit we've fallen short in the playoffs and the postseasons, right? But the Hosmer signing, him coming here kind of ushered in this era of, us breaking attendance records at Petco every single season. And just the overall like back-to-back postseasons and the NLCS. So uh, I fully expected the regression, but I didn't expect it this quickly. The last point I'll touch on Manny Machado. If we want to look at a contemporary that we can compare him to, he often got compared to Nolan Arenado, who is in Arizona this year, who was pretty much left for dead the past couple of years in St. Louis. St. Louis couldn't wait to get rid of that contract. Has a higher WAR than Manny right now at a 1.5. He's posting a 726 OPS, whereas Manny's at a negative -0.6 with a 614 OPS. So hopefully we can see him bounce back towards that level. Because to be honest with you, I would be okay with what the Diamondbacks are getting from Arenado right now if that's what is reality for Manny going forward, right? So, yeah. So let's transition to the state of the Padres. Should we really be buying? Should we be really selling? What should we do here? Things don't look too great for us right now. Shoot.
I think the jury is still out. Because like I said in the intro, we are a few games back from the Dodgers. We're still in wild card contention. But also looking around, like I don't really know what a sale like a fire sale looks like, and I don't think we have too much to buy with. So it's going to take some creative accounting from AJ Preller. We talked a lot about early in the season that going out and getting that big bat or getting that like ace or not even an ace, like a third guy. Is definitely something we need. And I think if we finish out June above 500 or at 500, we will be sellers. I mean, buyers at the deadline. Sorry, we'll
Yeah.
be buyers at the deadline. I think if we have another month like we had in May, or possibly worse, like we're tracking to have a worse month, believe it or not, I think we're going to be moving some people. And, we have a lot of guys that people want in the bullpen, and the bullpen sort of been the calling card for the years. But like Bill said, that doesn't mean anything if we can't get starting pitching or score runs. And it's sort of like something has to give at this point because this core is just not looking like it's going to get it done.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Coop?
Yeah, I'm fully on board with everything Bob has said, but I think the team could be in a position to be buyers, um, solely due to the current structure of their team in regards to salary cap and contracts, right? Um, of course, looking forward to next year, we're anticipating lockout, but with the contracts we have, lockout or not, new CBA or not, um, we don't really have any we don't have too many movable contracts that I think we want to move on from. Manny, his contract is not movable. No one's picking up Manny at 40 million. I think even his last year's production, like that's just not worth
No.
40 million
Mm-mm.
for a team to take it on. Xander could be a movable contract, but I think he's one of our bright spots right now, and so I'm not sure if he's a guy you'd want to move. Obviously, Jackson, um, you know, this year has not been great, but we know what he can do, and getting him at 15 million a year for I think the next 7 or 8 years after 2026,
Mhm.
that's a contract you want to keep, right? Um, so when you don't have a ton of pieces that you can really justify moving and selling off, then maybe you consider buying for guys who have a couple years of control
Yeah.
and see if the team can stabilize.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of where AJ Preller has operated from the past couple of years. If you think about just the targets that he's gone after, right? Arise had years, like maybe a year and a half of control when he traded for him from Miami. Dylan Cease when he came over from Chicago had like 2 years of control left, right? So, and if you recall, that's kind of where he operated from once Peter passed and the checkbook slam shut, right? Like we were like, are we selling? Are we buying? Um, I personally, in my opinion right now of this team, I like if I had to kind of say where our state is, I don't think we're contenders. I don't think we've proved it. We've lost to the Dodgers, um, got 6 games, swept by the Phillies, who are some of the elites. We haven't played the elites in the National League well. You could probably consider a young Cardinals team an elite team, right? So, um, I just think the window has kind of slammed shut, right? And I think it's slamming shut as a result of Manny Machado's drastic fall off because he's supposed to kind of carry a lot of that load offensively. I think Jackson figures it out. I think Xander after the CBA is hammering out 25 million a year for a starting shortstop's going to look not like not a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of like of the opinion of we just throw out what we have right now, and if we happen to squeak 90 wins and sneak into the wild card, great. If not, I don't think we should be moving a Ethan Salas, a Cash Mayfield, a Chris Screwcraft for a Tariq Skubal, especially if there's no guarantee that he's going to resign, right? Now, the positive in all of this is we don't know what the new ownership group is going to do as far as expanding payroll or not expanding payroll. But I kind of keep referring back to nobody spends $3.9 billion to just let it rot, right? Like, and we if we know San Diegans the way we do, once this team starts, you know, being full of 4A'ers, triple A'ers, that ballpark is gonna go half empty, and we're gonna find tickets on StubHub for a Sunday game 10 rows from the first base dugout for $20 again, right? Like that can go really quick. And I honestly don't blame San Diegans. Like, going to a ball game, taking your family to a ball game, even go by yourself is not cheap, right? It's a it's at least $100 if you're thinking tickets and a beer and a hot dog, right? So, um, like there is so much better things to do in the city than to watch a terrible baseball team play baseball, right? So I don't blame it one bit. I think this window is kind of closing, but I think on the positive side is we don't really know, we could be in the Tariq Skubal conversations come this winter, right? We don't know that yet,
Yeah.
but I certainly wouldn't trade for him. Yeah.
Definitely not.
What
Yeah,
is
I
what
wouldn't
is 2
remotely
months
consider a trade like that.
what does 2 months of Tarek Skubal realistically get this team best case scenario
Yeah.
out of the wild card round,
Yeah.
and then he signs somewhere else?
Yeah. And we talk about this a lot in the group chat. We could have prime Pedro Martinez, Randy Johnson going 1-2 in this rotation, and we would still lose ball games 2-1, right? Like that's just how bad this offense is, and I think like the state of the team is the problem that we have right now is we have a very mid pitching, but even a worse offense, right? So those two things together generally don't means bad baseball, but somehow we're above 500 because we had a hot start in April, right? So, but yeah, I full agreement on that piece. Like what 2 months of Tariq Skubal is not gonna all of a sudden help us defeat the Dodgers in a 5-game series, right? It's just not a reality with what we're working with right now. So, yeah. Anything to add, fellas, on the current state? Let's switch gears a little bit. If we were to buy, like, kind of going back to what Cooper was talking about, buying the people that have reasonable control years, what does that look like for the both of you, targets wise?
I think
Well, I got a
you
player in mind.
you
Yeah.
got one.
If there's one person, and I'm calling my shot now, of course,
Mm-hmm.
what's this, a month and a half before the trade deadline? Um,
Mhm.
I want the Padres to go after Seth Lugo
Yeah, full agreement.
from the Kansas City Royals.
Bring him back.
Now,
Bring him back.
our starting pitching right now, it's duct tape and paper clips,
Yep.
right? We're praying that the starting pitching can get through 5 innings, turn it over to the bullpen, have a 2-1-1 closeout, right? And of course, this is all dependent on the offense, figuring it out. But I think I have more trust in the offense regressing to the mean than I do the pitching figuring it out.
Yeah.
At least regarding our starting rotation. So with that in mind, and like Billy touched on, the team has been linked to guys like Tarek Skubal. I do not see a world where trading for him is remotely a good idea. Now, giving him a bag in the offseason, I would love for our new ownership to do that. But as far as fixing needs for this year, and having a little bit of stability moving forward, I think Seth Lugo could be the guy.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, he has 2 years of control left. So under contract through 2027, and I think there's a vesting option for the next year as well. And his money's pretty reasonable. If I remember correctly, he has about 2 years, 46 remaining. So 23 million a year AAV. Um, Not bad at all for a guy who could fit in a pretty clean third spot in our rotation. Um, and Seth Lugo's looking like 2024 Seth Lugo again. Last year he didn't play incredibly well. Of course, there was the injury. When he came back from injury, his performances were not it. But he's looking back to being that solid middle of the rotation guy.
Yeah.
And so I think a package to the Royals, given that they are not playing well right now, I want to say they're sitting, it's somewhere in the ballpark of 29 and 40 something. Um, that they're not in a good spot. They're probably not making playoffs, especially if they continue at the rate they're playing at. So why not give them some pieces that can be a little more stable without having to drop our whole bullpen, or not our bullpen, excuse me, our farm system. Um, I think guys like Miguel Mendez could be a piece that goes in a Seth Lugo package, maybe a Tirso. As much as we love the guy, maybe he goes in a package to Kansas City, right? He's a close to the majors type player. He has major league experience. He plays well in AAA. Maybe he just needs a new scene. Going back to Mendez, he's got a fastball that goes 95 to 98 miles an hour. Um, that's a piece where they can put that in their rotation for cheap and cut that 23 million to Seth Lugo when they don't really have even a playoff window as it looks
Yeah.
for this year. So I think Seth Lugo could be a guy who could really stabilize a rotation and definitely get this team at least through a wild card series.
Yeah. What about you, Bob?
So I'm gonna go on the offensive side of things. I think a guy like Taylor Ward, he's not under control, but his contract, he's only making $11.5 million with the Orioles, and he makes contact. He doesn't have incredible pop, but he has 4 homers this year, and just like the Royals, the O's are not in a good spot, and they
Yeah.
have a lot of holes. And I think we could form a package to get him off their hands because he's 1 year, he's a rental. They aren't doing particularly well, and they have a lot of outfield depth in their farm system. So
Yeah.
to me, that seems like a surplus where he's not really adding a whole lot to their team other than the walks. And if they go full rebuild, I would hop on that. He has, if you look at his baseball savant, his chase rate's like 89%. His speed up rate, like the rate he's chasing like fastballs and pitchers trying to speed him up, is in the 90s. So he's a guy who can really sit on a lot of stuff that our guys can't. Or even going out and, we're talking about reunions, bring Luis Ariz back.
Yeah.
The Giants are in the can. They're getting rid of everybody who's not Logan Webb and Young Hoo Lee. They might get rid of him. Like Buster Posey is blowing up that team yet again. And if we can get, by definition, the best hitter in baseball, there's nobody but Bobby Witt who has more hits in his time in Major League Baseball than Luis Ariz.
Yeah.
And he plays a good second base. That is something I didn't see happening this year. He's one of the better second basemen in the National League in terms of outs above average. And they lack pitching. And we have pitching in our farm system. Miguel Mendez is somebody who Coop brought up, who I would be more than happy to trade, like at best this season, for a guy for a 3-time batting champ who was a great clubhouse presence for us, somebody who the players obviously liked being around and hit the ball really well. And people soured on Arias in his time here, but I think like we're missing, sort of like Coop was talking about, that engine to push, which is little bloops, little singles,
Yeah.
nothing crazy,
Yeah.
just like hitting the ball, like little league stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's what we need.
Yeah. Worth noting, if things continue to trend this way, and we end up being sellers, the most likely candidates that's probably going to move is probably going to be Morhone and Jason Adams. Both will be unrestricted free agents at the end of this season, which kind of will end the whole little break up a little four horsemen of that back at the end of the bullpen. Hoping not. I really like Morhone, but at his age and what he brings to the table, he's gonna bring in a bag, guaranteed. So probably, uh, we're probably trending that way. I personally think it'd be foolish for us to keep giving blue chip prospects away, to chase something that's not attainable at this moment. But things could change really quickly, right? We can go on a hot run for the rest of this month. Win the series against the Brave, win the series against the Dodgers. All of a sudden, we feel really good. We're Terry Skubal away again, and that's kind of like, the push and pull as Padres fans have dealt with pretty much our entire lives as Padres fans, right? So I mean, it's par for the course. But I think, as of right now, as much as I am on board with the whole AJ Preller fuck the prospect stuff, we can't do that anymore. The window is just slam shut. So, more likely than not, it feels like at this point in time, before we're sitting, Adam and Morhone probably are going to be on other teams post deadline. But yeah, what do you guys feel about that? It seems pretty accurate as far as that goes.
Yeah. And trading away somebody like Adrian Morejon, there are a lot of teams who are currently in contention who need bullpen help.
Yeah.
like I look at a team like the Pirates who has four guys who are better than any pitching prospect that we have currently on their roster, and they need middle relief help and they need late stage
Yeah.
relief help. Um, I would be totally fine flipping Adrian Morejon in a prospect package to get somebody like a Peyton Toole
Yeah.
from Boston or Jared Jones, and having them work with who I still think, despite Griffin Canning struggles, Lucas Giolito struggles, the best pitching coach in baseball, Ruben Niebla. Like these guys who are very like volatile, like live wire pitchers. I think he has a track record of really reeling them in. Um, and somebody who's young and controllable is all that I'm after. Like I really think we should, if we haven't taken our name out of the Tarek Skubal hat, I think we should go ahead and do it because he's not the answer.
Yeah.
Somebody like that.
Yeah, especially the fact that it's probably going to take two premium prospects, three premium prospects to for half a season. It just doesn't make sense for us. Let's skip ahead and talk about the upcoming series. So there's three series that I kind of want us to talk about and go through. The Rangers is the first one, but I think the two biggest ones that pop up in my mind that were already kind of circled on our calendar was Atlanta and LA coming into town at the end of the month. Both NL elites. We'll dive into those a little bit, but let's talk about Texas. What are we expecting from Texas, Coop?
Yeah. Texas, looking at the pitchers we're likely to face, we're probably looking at a gauntlet, right? Um, just counting forward through the rotation, we're likely facing guys like Jacob deGrom, Nathan Eovaldi, Mackenzie Gore. But I think there's something the Padres could take advantage of in this series, and this is where I'm most excited to bring y'all some more advanced analytics. If you look at their VAA, which stands for vertical angle, oh God, I'm forgetting the last word of that
Attack.
stat. Um,
Vertical approach angle.
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Approach angle, yes. It basically has to do with their pitching and how flat their pitches look. So for a pitch that looks really flat going into the zone, at the top of the zone, it's really hard for batters to hit that. The Braves are terrible at that. A lot of their pitches drop. Um, and so that can look like a hanging sinker middle. So I think if this team can wait on those pitches, take advantage of the fact that they do not throw those high fastballs well, I think there's some real opportunity to move guys around the bases um, through that. Um, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I see in the Ranger series. Um, but I mean, outside of that, they're a damn good ball club. So it'll be a challenge no matter what. Um, but I think there's a world where we could take advantage of it.
Yeah, you certainly hope, maybe our bats come alive a little bit in that Texas heat, right? The ball carries a little bit farther as it gets hotter. But any thoughts on the Rangers, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, the pitching, they have great names. I mean, DeGrom is somebody who has terrorized us along with the entire National League for almost a decade when he was in New York. Nate Eovaldi is a guy who has a big sweeper, like slider hybrid that really tends to fool a lot of right-handed batters. There's still a team that's below 500,
Yeah.
and I said it last episode that you know you are your record, and I'm hoping that the above 500 side of the Padres shows up. I mean, for their last 10, they're 4 out of 6,
Yeah.
and they're not scoring an incredible amount of runs. So we could sort of see an offensive mid-off, and whoever hits the big one sort of wins the game. And not that we've been on the winning side of a lot of those contests. I'm hoping, sort of like you talked about with VAA, that like Andy can catch one in the zone. Gavin can catch one in the zone with runners on, like he's done so many times this year, and sort of like light a fire with this team that we've been desperately needing before we start probably the biggest homestand of the season.
Yeah.
And coming into it, we're gonna have guys who aren't really at the same level, so we're gonna need a sort of that total baseball. Like I think just a shot in the dark, we're going to see Samad Taylor take over a game again
Yeah.
and be the difference maker, playing great defense, getting on base, laying down a bunt. And we have to win in the margins because looking at the matchup, looking at the pitching matchup, we're not going to win that just on paper.
Yeah. Well, worth noting, the Padres have been dominant against the American League West this year. We're 10-2
Mhm.
in 12 games. We swept the Mariners on the season and faced some pretty good pitchers up there in Seattle. We went 6-0 against them on the season. 2-1 against the Angels. Coop and I were at the Sunday finale, series finale, and 2-1 against the Sacramento, Las Vegas Athletics.
Yeah.
Hopefully we continue that AL West dominance. But let's talk Atlanta. My goodness, I mean, we knew they were good, right? But
Yeah.
they are currently pacing the National League right now, right? So talk to me about
Mhm.
Atlanta, fellas.
I'm worried about the Braves. You said, and it is true that we have always played them really well. I'm really hoping that that side of us comes out, um, because looking down their lineup, it's sort of like I think they might be better than the Dodgers in almost every aspect as it stands right now. Their bullpen has been nails. They're hitting bombs. They're getting guys on base. And they just got Drake Baldwin back, who was a big missing piece in sort of that little skid that they went on. He was on like the 10-day IL. Um, Chris Sale is always somebody who's going to scare me, just like Jacob DeGrom. I haven't looked at the probable pitchers because it's so far out. But if we get a guy, like a Bryce Elder or a Spencer Schwellenbach, guys who are a little bit more wild, I hope we can take advantage of that because you've seen teams who are worse than us, like Boston, take advantage of that. So there is chinks in the armor. It's not impregnable. The Braves are not going to win, 140 games, but it's going to be a tough mountain to climb, especially when they have guys like Rasigno Iglesias and our old friend Robert Suarez, who have been absolutely bulletproof,
Yeah.
coming in interchangeably, really, in the seventh, eighth, ninth with that bullpen.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the Braves, Coop. What are your thoughts? What is some of the analytics? What should we be looking for?
Yeah, so I know we don't have official projected pitchers yet or probable pitchers, just because, like Bob said, it's a little bit far out. But just looking through the rotation, assuming no big injuries, Chris Sale's probably on the table.
Yeah.
And he has been a dog this year. He's running a 2.3 ERA, 92 Ks, just over one WHIP. Like he's been a dog. But one thing that is I think it's going to be our blessing or our curse is they throw a strike on the first pitch more than any other team in the league. And we swing at the first pitch. It feels like more than any other team in the league.
Yeah.
So whether it means playing more patiently, just so we can see our pitchers or see the pitchers better, or if it means just play like we do and we can attack more successfully, I definitely think there's a chance there. But I have a feeling in at least a couple of these games, we're gonna blow them out or we're gonna get blown out.
Yeah.
Um, and it all comes down to probably that first pitch of each at bat. I think is going to be more important in this series than many other series this year.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Not much to add. I think it's one of those things where we just kind of hope and pray that we get the version of the Padres that have been historically good against them, right? So we'll see. The Braves are currently 5-5 in the last 10 as of this recording. They are second in the National League at 46-25 with a plus 107 run differential. So definitely going to be another big test for us. That series got has me nervous just because, like I said, we haven't paced well against the elites in the national leagues. But let's jump into the Dodgers series. Let's wrap up our pod talking about our favorite team from the north. Talk to me about the Dodgers, fellas.
They're
I
cruising.
think they're cruising, but hear me out. Hear me out. We played them extremely well. And if Mason doesn't make that throwing error to tie France, we win that series. And I think it's very possible that we can win this series only because they're going to be fired up. And they're going to be looking for a reason to turn the season around. And nothing but a hunch. This is just years of watching. I think we might sweep the series or we're going to get swept. There's no in between.
We got a hot take
There's
over
no
here.
world. There's no world where we win one game. It's 3 games or we win none. And I think only because the team is going to be looking for a reason to get fired up and believe in themselves. This
Yeah.
is I spent a long time playing sports, and you get fired up for the big one. And like the old like I played in high school take. But these guys are competitors, and these teams show up against each other. Just they could
Yeah.
play any day, anywhere, and it is going to be good baseball. So I think finally we're going to break through.
Yeah,
That's just my hot take.
you see it though. Like these guys in that Padres clubhouse, they want to beat the Dodgers. There's a lot of
Mhm.
mutual respect between the two clubhouses. These players are friends. They hop on each other's pods in the off season. So the animosity is more the fan base than anybody else, right? But you recall
Yeah.
last series when they came to town, Manny Machado called a meeting at the mound. Like that's like when was the last time you see Manny call a meeting at the mound, right? Like to kind of calm down the pitcher and really kind of show some of that leadership, right? But um the Dodgers, I can't say enough good things about them. They are who we're pacing against. They are who we're chasing. They're the two-time defending champions, right? And speaking of perspective, when you have an embarrassment of riches and your biggest problem is an underperforming $50 million player in Cal Tucker, like what are we talking about here? Talk to me a little bit about the Dodgers, Coop.
Yeah. I think I'm kind of on the same page where it feels like this could be a sweep or get swept series. Um, and I think this is a series of mind games. Looking at the Dodgers bats, one big negative outlier for them is they have a bottom 10 hard hit rate against non-sweeper sliders. Um, and so that means that if we can sort of flip our pitch mix, see guys like Michael King, if he's up in that series, I haven't thought that far in advance, and of course the team could adjust. Um, but I'm sure that Stam is going to do everything he can to put his three best guys forward in that series, just given the series it is, if at all possible. Um, but yeah, with that bottom 10 hard hit rate against, those types of sliders, I think if we can flip the pitch mix a little bit, have a lot more sliders than fastballs from guys like, if Michael King's in that series, his slider's dirty, his sinker's dirty. Let's see a little more of the slider, touch less of the sinker. Because the Dodgers are a team that wants to get the ball in the air, right?
Yeah.
We talked about the Phillies being a power team. The Dodgers, in many ways, are a power team too. They got a lot of guys who can hit nukes. And so, if we can keep the ball on the ground, I think the series becomes more of a tactical battle and less of a test of talent.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Either way, it's gonna be a good series. I'm with you, fellas. It's either I don't. I'm not as optimistic. I think if we win the series, it's 2-1. I think just given the baseball we've been playing the past month and a half, it's hard for me to envision us sweeping an elite team in the NL. But if we do, you'll see a lot of posts from me about go get me Turk Skubal, right? And that changes with
Yeah.
me. I feel like every other week, but as of now, no. But that kind of wraps it up for us for this pod. Any final thoughts, fellas? Let's start with you, Coop.
Uh, Not too much for me. It was great to be on for my first episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Um, but yeah, I'm looking forward to, like I said, getting into these advanced analytics, talking more about sort of the strategy in baseball and how teams can attack different series. Um, yeah, I think this Padres team is at a tipping point, and we're going to see if we're back to the dog days of my childhood when we sucked in the early 2010s, possibly even further back, even worse, or if we can start looking like that 22 to 24 Padres again.
Yeah. What about you, Bob?
Got to keep the faith, because if keeping the faith was easy, everybody would do it. This is where, as fans,
Reach.
we have to do our part. I think back a lot to um, bad Padres baseball. There wasn't people watching. And then, that sort of changed. And I think that the biggest thing as fans that we can do is look at the bright spots. Because even when there's things that are going really poorly, um, Xander Bogaerts is putting together one of his best seasons as a Padre. Samad Taylor looks awesome, and he was like one of those like AJ Preller like dumpster dive finds in like February, who is hitting close to, in a very small sample size, like 360 and getting on base every single game he's played. Um, and just I think a mindset switch is all it takes sometimes.
Yeah.
Right now I'm looking for things that we can develop, and I'm waiting until I'm shown something to be like, yes, we're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
But you got to keep the faith. That's all you got to do. Just be like every day, show up, be like, we are playing professional baseball. You can win this ball game. Not
Yeah.
we, but the team.
The team, yeah.
And you know, somebody's got to get hot. Why not us? You
Yeah.
know, I'm gonna start banging that drum really loud because a lineup of Fernando Tatis, Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, I think these guys will figure it out. And with the young guys doing the next man up thing, you know, we've seen a lot of bright spots. Just hop on the bandwagon, dude. Start believing. That's the only thing we can do.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting this is still as tough as of stretch of a baseball this team has gone through the past month and a half, month and 6 weeks and change. This is still easily like the most successful era of Padres baseball in the history. Whether you've been a fan for 10 years, 5 years, if you've been a fan for 5 years, you're very spoiled. Like, I mean, I did not grow up to anything like this outside of like '98. There's a couple outlier seasons where we made a run and things like that. So
2007,
yeah,
like
yeah,
2010.
a couple outliers, but mostly just been bad baseball and prospects that cannot like hit for anything, right? Like we couldn't develop any kind of prospect. So um I'm with it. Keep the faith, but I also, am a huge advocate of this is a long baseball season. If this team is pissing you off and stressing you out, take a break. You don't need to
Yeah.
grind through every game. Nobody's going to think you're less of a fan because you need to stop watching baseball for a week. But for those of you that are suffering with us night in, night out, we see you. But yeah, that's all for me today, from all of us today. So thank you again for watching. Even if you spent 5 minutes watching, from the bottom of our heart, thank you for just 5 minutes of your time. But if you happen to watch the whole damn thing, hour and a half worth, you're the real MVP. We appreciate ya. We don't really have a set schedule right now. We're three guys that just do other things for a living. So we'll probably try to film again in a couple weeks here, but no guarantees. But again, this is something that came from our community that we kind of built on Threads, and hopefully we can continue recording, and hopefully the next podcast that we film, the Padres, we're sitting at a different vantage point where the Padres are again 10 games over 500, a couple games behind the Dodgers. Who knows? Anything could happen, but you got to keep the faith. But that's it from us. See you guys next time. Thank you.
I got a guy, he'll get it done. Talking about me,